Hello, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy on Patriot World Talk Radio. It is Thursday, May 21st, and I am doing a series on being an advocate. How does someone become an advocate? Why does somebody become an advocate? Well, there's all different reasons. An advocate is someone who speaks up for someone else. An advocate could speak up for themselves or a group. One lost to change, so they advocate for that. And with me tonight is the wonderful, the marvelous Sue Fernandez, and she's going to talk about how she became an advocate. Thank you, Sue.
Hi. Thank you, Betsy. Thank you again for the invitation. How are you doing today?
You're welcome. I'm doing great, thanks. How are you doing?
Super, super. Listen, when you asked me a couple of weeks ago about being an advocate, I was kind of hesitant for several reasons. But then I thought, what? Why not? I'll say yes, because there's a lot of ways this can go, good, bad, or indifferent. I, too, looked up the definition, Betsy, and my definition came up with, as far as an advocate, the definition I came up with, a person who publicly supports or recommends a particular cause or policy. So that's my definition. Well, not mine. It's Google's definition. Anyways, let me share my story, Betsy. Mine wasn't intentional. And to the best of my recollection, I've always been an advocate for my parents. Several years ago, I worked for an attorney who specialized in family law. That's where I learned the value of a living trust, as well as other legal documents. Having a living trust helps in estate taxes. What I did, Betsy, was I handwrote both of their wills and included what their wishes were regarding their money and belongings. Again, that was maybe, I'd say, about 20 years ago. That's how long ago. To this day, believe it or not, I still have those handwritten wills in my personal file. From there, I learned about the form wills, the ones you can purchase at a stationery store like Office Depot. And by the way, they still offer them. You can still purchase them for maybe like about $5 per form. By the way, like I said, they still offer them. It wasn't until about 3 years before my dad passed that my parents hired an attorney to provide a living trust, which included several other documents like the power of attorney for health and finances. In the beginning, you can communicate with your loved ones, doctors, nurse, or ask a close friend to sit with you while visiting the doctor. That's being an advocate, Betsy. Doing so will allow you another perspective on issues, as well as your advocate clarifying and understand the conversations. Don't be afraid to take notes or ask questions to your appointment, or ask the doctor if he doesn't mind you recording the conversation. Make every effort to build a rapport with the advocate, whether it's a doctor, nurse, or sibling. Like I said, if you don't have the confidence to speak up, I'm sure there's someone around you that does. Again, you don't have to use them as a crutch, but just communicate with them and get their thoughts, get a second opinion. That's also helpful. There's a saying, Betsy, you can attract more bees with honey than you can with vinegar. Again, for those who cannot, it's okay. Some of us don't have the DNA, but maybe your sister, brother, neighbor, or best friend does. Lastly, and this is one of my gripes, Betsy, too often when we do speak up, you're looked down upon others. Betsy, I've told you before, at this age and stage of the game, I don't care. As long as you're not intentionally hurting anyone and you see an injustice, speak up. Why wouldn't you want to speak up?
That's right.
The other thing is this, Betsy. I saw this the other day and I really liked it, and I'll read it. People of character do the right thing even if no one else does, not because they think it will change the world, but because they refuse to be changed by the world.
I like that.
And that's it, Betsy. I wanted to share with you one last thing. As I've mentioned to you before, I'm on other Facebook pages regarding Alzheimer's, and someone had remarked in there that her aunt took her uncle to the hospital and they refused to take care of him and blah, blah, blah. And so I followed that strand on my Facebook page. And I don't think she provided enough information, so it wasn't clear. But I found a lot of information out just from other people commenting, and I looked into it. And one of the other Facebook friends mentioned that's illegal. And what it's called the ETMLA. What that stands for, it stands for the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act. I'm sorry, it's EMTALA. I'm sorry, EMTALA. It's a federal law that requires anyone coming to an emergency department to be stabilized and treated regardless of their insurance status or ability to pay. So that, I hope, clears things up for your listeners regarding getting refused at a hospital. I looked a little bit further in that, and they did mention that if the hospital, and some of the smaller hospitals are out in a rural area, and if you know, some of them don't have sufficient equipment for that. So I'm thinking that's what happened to her uncle. She just, immediately picked up on that they wouldn't treat him. But I don't think that was a case. Again, she didn't come back and respond. She didn't have all the details, but they can deny you care because they don't have the sufficient equipment and things of that sort to stabilize that individual. But on the other hand, I learned something new. I did not know that they cannot turn you down. The other thing on that I learned was because of that law, when you go into the hospital, they give you a form that includes I didn't look up the form, but there's a form they give you and that you agree to their treatment. In addition, they give you a form, and I think it's on the same form that you agree to be responsible for 100% of the bill. Well, that's illegal, Betsy. They aren't supposed to ask or talk to you about any financing. But nobody knows that. If you look that up, Betsy, it's true because coincidentally that came up in that book that I was reading, that I've been reading called The Price We Pay. That physician mentions what happened with him is he had a good friend come visit him. She had to have some type of emergency surgery while he was there. And he was familiar of this law. So he obviously went in to be her advocate. They charged her like $50,000 for the surgery. He knew it should have been $12,500. But prior to that, when they admitted her, he told her, listen, sign this, but do not sign that you agree to 100% treatment, et cetera, et cetera. So she did. They raised a commotion, but she did not sign that last clause. So let's go further on. She comes home. She gets the bill. It's $50,000 instead of $12,500. She calls them back, and she tries to negotiate with the bill. So they wouldn't they negotiated. Says, okay, we'll lower it to $40,000. They says, no, we're not going to do this, and things of that sort. Come to find out, she tried to negotiate further. It didn't happen. So they sent her to the billing. So not billing. Who was it? Not the billing. When they send your bill out to an outside
the collectors.
Yeah,
collections. Yeah.
They send the bill to collections. So what happened was this: they wouldn't negotiate. So she says, okay, what you need to do for me in order for me to pay this bill, she says, I want you to give me a copy of the signed agreement where I agreed to pay 100% of this bill. They never came back to her, Betsy. They never came back to her because she did not sign that agreement when being admitted. And you've seen it before, too, even at some of your doctor's offices, Betsy. It'll say you agree to treatment and also you will pay 100% of the bill. You don't have to sign that. You don't have to sign that. Because,
that's good to know.
Well, yeah, and what his focus is on this book is for all the health professionals, health insurance, pharmaceutical companies to be transparent so we can have the option to pick who and what we want. You know, like I said, it was really interesting. They never came back to her. What she did end up doing was she paid the surgeon's bill. She paid the surgeon's bill. But again, this hospital charged her like 5 times the amount they should have charged her. But by her not signing that one paragraph on that form, and again, it's illegal for them to ask you for that, to ask you for any finances. By law, they have to treat you and stabilize you. So
that's right.
That's
yes.
what that's what I learned, Betsy. That's what I learned.
Well, thank you, Sue. I'm going to ask you some questions about being an advocate. I know you took care of your parents, and you learned to, stand up for them, and you had to be on top of things, and you are so great in sharing your information. And to me, when you come on Chatting with Betsy, you are doing advocacy. You are helping other people be aware of this, vital information. How did you become so knowledgeable in your resources and then to share them with the public? That's really nice of you. I really appreciate you doing that.
Sure, Betsy. I think it's a little bit of everything, Betsy, to be honest with you, because I've worked for a lot of nonprofits, and I've been able to learn about their services. Like I mentioned, I worked for the American Cancer Society. I volunteered for them. And in that, the girls will tell you, when I worked for the American Cancer Society here locally, they had some resources. It was just me because it was slow. But I wanted to find more resources for the patients. You don't know how many underserved people we have that are seeking help. Just to talk to them, to give them a free wig. Again, it's just talking to them. A lot of the elderly don't want to communicate with their children that their spouse has cancer. They don't want to burden them and things of that sort. So I took it upon myself, and I call it a cheat sheet. It was resources. I started calling all kinds of places like wig shops, a lot of women that have breast cancer, they need special bras, and they're very expensive. They're not your average price. They're about 2 and 3 times for a special bra. I had a good rapport with one of the local pharmaceutical companies, and to this day I'm still in touch with her, and I'm just so blessed to know her because if I have a question about certain things regarding pharmacy, I can call her. I can call her tomorrow morning first thing, and she'll deal with it. She'll help me communicate, whether it's communicating to someone in Spanish or if they have free diapers. This one lady called me when I worked for the American Cancer Society that they were really down and out. Her mom's dying, and they needed more diapers. Do they know where they can get extra diapers and pads? So I called my good friend over there at the pharmaceutical agency, Ray Fisher Pharmacy, and I asked her, I said, listen, by chance, do you have anything laying around with regards to pads and diapers? And she says, yes, I do. Let me go back in the warehouse, and sure enough, I ended up getting the thank you from the lady for referring her. Things of that sort, the small things, Betsy, that was at the American Cancer Society. And like I said, I created an additional cheat sheet resource for the patients there. That and when I worked for when I volunteered at the Alzheimer's Association, just seeing all those great resources there. I was a counselor for Medicare. I communicated with the underserved there and educated them on the Medicare health insurance, or I referred them to other resources in the community. That took years, Betsy. It wasn't until within the last 5 years, because I enjoy going to these conferences, and I think I know why, Betsy. I learned something new every day. You know, again, I went to a VA conference. This was a couple of years ago, and I learned that the veterans, because a lot of them were in the outskirts of Fresno, they would have to take an hour or an hour and a half to drive one way. Now, mind you, they're elderly and pretty sick, and they have to drive an hour and a half to wait in the office for another hour or two, and they've got to drive back home. There I learned what the VA was doing for the elderly in the rural areas. They were giving them free computers. And what they did was they ended up providing telehealth. But there's, like I said, I just really enjoy getting these resources and reading books. I read a lot of books regarding health and things of that sort. It's just amazing, Betsy, what you learn going out there. And I truly have to encourage your listeners with loved ones that have Alzheimer's or any type of dementia, go to those conferences. You'll learn. You'll meet other people, like people. You may acquire a new friend that you can converse with. Things of that sort. Not only educational, it'll give you a break. They give you all kinds of examples and skits on how to manage people with certain behaviors. There's doctors, there's neurologists there, there's other caregivers. They also have a session in the end where you can ask questions. So it's just, there's a bunch of help out there. You just have to want to get it, Betsy. It's taking the initiative. You're a good example. Let's talk about you, Betsy. Although I've given you referrals, guess what? You picked up the phone and you called and you questioned, and that's what you have to do. You're advocating on your behalf and on behalf of Matt. But again, it comes with knowledge. Because I knew about Levanta, Medicare. All I did was I gave you the name and number. And it could have gone the opposite, but it didn't. It worked out for you. But you took the initiative, Betsy. Don't give me the credit. You took the initiative because I didn't call for you, did I?
No, but you gave me the information because I never heard.
We're going to have a fight, Betsy.
I never heard of Levanta ever.
Yeah.
I mean, I never heard of it. And, you know, because you're an advocate, Sue, this is, you know, like I'm trying to tell people, you know, when you're an advocate, it's not just, okay, you could just be, you know, like for, you know, yourself and your loved one. Right. But someone like you, Sue, is an advocate for everybody. You know, you come on here, to me, that's being an advocate. You're sharing information. You share information with me personally. Yes, I did call Levanta, but I wouldn't have called if it wasn't for you telling me that. If you weren't being an advocate, saying, you know what, Betsy, and you were advocating for me. You were saying, Betsy, you know what? Here's Levanta. Call up. Of course, it was up to me to make that call.
Right.
Because as the saying goes, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Right.
And, you know, but you get the information out there that is so helpful. Just like telling me about negotiating the hospital bill. Yes, I had to make that phone call, but I didn't even know that I could do that if it wasn't for you.
Right.
Excuse me. So,
speaking of that, I need to interject because I learned something the other day from this book, and I wasn't aware of this either. And I think what I get charged on, what I get excited about, Betsy, is that these are little hidden secrets that I know no one knows about. You know, not everybody, because I've had the time, I've been at home pretty often, so I've had the time, others don't. But these are little tricks of the trade. It's like me giving you the combination to open the lock. But see, you still have to turn that dial, though, right?
Right. I still have to be, right.
Right. But still,
I still have to be my own advocate.
Right. But still, these are little secrets that I know no others know about. And they're laws. They're not secrets, Betsy. They're lost. If you look them up, you'll find the definition, and you can go probably a step further and even do more research. Like I said, this book that I'm reading, I'm writing down tons of organizations that he refers you to. And this is a book, but I'm adding certain things on the list. One of them I learned, and I think we talked about it privately, was there's a healthcare blue book where this organization will give you a list of surgeries. Let's say I have to have a surgery here in Fresno, California, zip code 93755. You go onto that healthcare blue book, and it'll tell you what the average cost should be. So you talk to your doctor, and not the doctor, the billing, and they'll say, well, we're going to charge you $40,000 to do the surgery. Well, guess what? The average range should be $20,000. So why are they telling me it's $40,000? Because a hospital's charging you that much more. So again, because this is nothing of an emergency type situation, so I go and I check out the hospital down the block, and they only want to charge me $25,000. So where do you want to go? On top of that, Betsy, the surgeon that you talk to, they have privileges in different hospitals. They don't know anything about the billing part. All they know is about their portion of the bill. They don't care about anything else. So if your surgeon has hospital privileges at hospital A, he may have hospital privileges at hospital B. But hospital B will charge you only $20,000, $25,000, instead of hospital A wants to charge you $40,000 or $50,000. So where do you want to go? To hospital B, right?
That's right.
But,
so
you have to do your research.
Right, and you give people such valuable information. You are the type of advocate that encourages people to be an advocate for themselves, because you're saying, hey, I have this information, here's the information, and be your own advocate. Here's the information for you to go to a doctor, call up an insurance agency,
right,
whatever the case is, and to stand up for yourself or your loved one. And you have the information that people may not know otherwise. I mean, I know, right. Like I said, I didn't know. And this is why listeners, and I tell the people in my group, Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement, I know you tell the people in, your group, and you encourage them, you need to get informed, you need to get educated so that you can be an advocate, even if it's only to speak for yourself and for your loved one. Not everybody's going to come on the radio or speak publicly, and you don't have to be an advocate. Just as long as you're advocating for yourself and your loved one, which is really not a choice sometimes. There's no one else. And you might find, listener, that you have to be an advocate for yourself and your loved one, that there's just no one else. And this is, you know what I'm saying.
Right. No.
Go ahead, Sue.
And no, I just wanted to interject for a second. Is if you're a caregiver, you are an advocate.
That's
you
right.
are an advocate already. And you don't think you are, or you want to be stronger, just learn the techniques. Educate yourself regarding, your mother's newly diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Well, read into it. The Alzheimer's Association is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, how much more information do you need? It's 1-800-272-3900. They're not the only organization out there. They have referrals, lists, resources for newly diagnosed Alzheimer's patients. And the caregiver, they'll give you a list of questions, what to ask to your next appointment. Or they'll give you a list of referrals of agencies, home health agencies that are in your area. They'll give you a list of homes that are in your area, whether they're a large facility or whether it's a residential care facility. Here, like I said, we're so blessed in Fresno that we have the greatest office, in my eyes, of course, but they are such a wealth of information here locally, Betsy. I've called the 1-800 number. As a matter of fact, I think it was 3 weeks ago. I called, I think it was like 10 o'clock. I was doing something, and they're shipping me over some information that I need. But they're there. They offer free counseling. It's everything they do is free. I think the only thing that isn't free is if, I know, they offer a service to put a band on your loved one in case they start to wander. But everything else there, Betsy, is free. The other thing, this is a little tip, if the caregivers want to go to different conferences, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an Alzheimer's conference. If there's a subject or an ailment or some particular organization is having a conference and it's $35, $45 and you don't have the money, call them, ask them, tell them, listen, I don't have the money, but I'd like to attend this conference. Is your organization offering any grants? Guess what? A lot of them do. I've gotten into about 3 or 4 of them in that way myself. You'd be surprised.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that, Sue.
Yes.
That they give grants for that.
Yes, because if the organization is collaborating, I'll give you an example. Let's just say the hospital and the American Cancer Society and a nursing association are conducting this conference on behalf of the American Cancer Society. They all have budgets, Betsy. And some of them will donate a certain amount of money for people that cannot afford to attend these conferences. Call them. Say, listen, I don't have any money to attend this. I'm a caregiver. I'm interested in this topic. I'm a caregiver for my grandmother who has cancer. Do you have any grants available? And they'll say yes or no. And most of the times they'll say yes. They have a limited amount of money. They don't have a big budget for that. But the sooner you get your name in and on that list, you're in like Flint.
That's good to know. Thank you, Sue. That's why I say, folks, when Sue Fernandez talks, I forgot to say in the beginning of this audio cast, get your paper and pen because the information, I call Sue the walking resource woman. She is full of knowledge. And I'm so grateful that I have you as a friend. And, you know, you helped me a lot. And, you know, coming on to my show. Oh, thank you. You know, coming on, chatting with Betsy and sharing your information is very kind and generous of you. And I'll say this out to the world. When Sue Fernandez starts her consulting business, I'm promoting her right here and chatting with Betsy because I think you would be great. I could even see you, Sue, in the advocacy group, like a public group changing laws and, you know, something to that effect. That's where you do the most effect, to be honest with you, Betsy, and we'll talk offline on that. That's where you make the most changes, is in public policy, changing laws and things of that sort. That's not easy as talking to you, Betsy, believe you me, because you have to convince. It's politics. You have to convince others to see your side of the story. That's tough. Right, and there's, you know, various advocacy groups for various organizations, which that's me right now. I can't think of it right now, but you know, they're out there. Well, look at our friend Marcia Burr. She got into I think as a board member there. Oh, that's right. In town, remember? And that's right. She's right in the middle. She's right in the thick of things. Right. What's it called? Elder care down in Florida. Yes. She became a board member, and that's where you help the elderly there, and, you know, you try to make public policy or make things right for your city. That's right. Marcia she's going to be coming on to talk about her advocacy when she can. And, you know, that's what the series is about that I thought of. I want people to know that, you could be an advocate, and you are. If you're a caregiver, you are advocating for your loved one to get the right treatment, the right medications. And, it doesn't take bravery or being courageous. It really just, when you're in a situation that your back is up against the wall, you have to come out. I say come out fighting, but I don't mean it physically. I mean it, in a way of speaking. Don't hit your doctors or nurses, please. Don't do that. But you have to really get it.
Feel like it, Betsy.
Yeah, feel like it for sure. I know that feeling, but you have to be very informative when you talk to a doctor.
Yeah, diplomatic.
You can't get right. You can't be angry. You can't be yelling and screaming. They're not going to listen to you. When you come to a doctor, you have to be calm.
Betsy. Yeah.
Right. You have to be calm, cool, and collective, as they say. And
but get your ducks in a row and learn what you want to communicate to them, and make them your advocate. Build a rapport with the doctors or nurses. You may not, have good instincts about the doctor or a nurse, but find another healthcare professional that can empathize with you, and just work from there. And if they aren't of any help, then you go up on the ladder. You go over their heads. But your best bet is to make an advocate, in reference to, a physician or a nurse and things of that sort. I think I told you in reference to my sister that we were running around like chickens with our heads cut off because they were playing hot potato with my sister, and she was in a hospital, and she wasn't doing well. She had heavy-duty surgery. She had colon cancer, and this doctor says, we can do this surgery on her because she had a severe stroke after that. The doctor says, we can do some surgery, but we have to send her over to this hospital, and, her chances are either slim to none. So the family decided for her to have the surgery. So they did that. But when it was ready for her to leave, they wanted to place her home. The girls, there was no one at home that could help her. Her husband was older. He had issues with his shoulder, and she was very disabled. So he couldn't help manage her. But the social workers insisted on them taking her home, and they called me up crying, Aunt Sue, what do I do? I says, I don't care if this is me, because they were pressuring her big time to take her home. They couldn't, Betsy. They had never been a caregiver, and she had tons of disabilities. And people literally had to get her up and walk her here, walk her there, and everything. They couldn't. They were all working. So I says, you tell them, no, you cannot do it. You're not bringing her home, and that the social worker can help with placing her in a facility. And they kept on saying, no, we can't, you take her home. So they kept on calling me. And I says, listen, first of all, go back there, and this is just me. But again, this has been going on for days, Betsy. So you get caught up and you get fed up. And I says, you tell them, you threaten them that you cannot bring her home because she will harm herself. There's no help. And if I have to, I'll sue you. So they did that. It didn't get anywhere. I'm sure they've heard that before. So what I ended up suggesting to her, contact her doctor. Guess what? The doctor intervened. He became their advocate for the girls, and they found a hospital in her backyard, a beautiful hospital, and they took care of her. I mean, we couldn't have asked for anything more. A lot of these facilities aren't great, and they were concerned that they were going to place her in a facility an hour or two away from their home. And they can do that if there's no facilities. It's densely populated in Southern California, Betsy, and unless you could afford a facility on your own, there's slim to none, and these facilities aren't the greatest. So, again, I told the girls, call her doctor, and sure enough, they communicated with the doctor, and it was within 2 days they transferred her to this great hospital, and they placed her in hospice. So there's a good example of a physician being an advocate. But I had to push the girls. They had never experienced this. Their mother was dying in the hospital. And I told them, don't let them push you into, and they did everything they could to release my sister, Betsy. There was a day before all of this happened, and the girls kept on telling them, no, we can't do it. But what happened was the day before this happened was one of my nieces, her daughter, was going to talk to one of the doctors, so she wanted to make sure she spoke to a physician. So she got there about 6:30, and she was walking up to her mom's room. And mind you, they were trying to push my sister off on another facility. They didn't care. So she was walking to her mother's room, and one of the nurses came up to her very fastly and went by her and whispered, Kim, run to your mom's room. They're trying to discharge your mom. The ambulance is here to take her to another facility. She says, what? She says, I can't talk to you. She says, go. She went over there, and sure enough, there was an ambulance driver waiting for them to transport her to a facility. They were going to do it without any signature or anything of that sort. Because once they transport you, Betsy, there's no way to get them to another facility. It's done. So that's why I say they were playing hot potato. So my sister got there, and she says, what's happening? And the social worker came out and says, oh, well, we're transporting her to XYZ facility. She says, oh, no, you're not. She says, we didn't get any phone calls. We didn't sign any paper. She's not going anywhere. So that's when they called me and talked to me a little bit more. And I says, my last resort, like I said, was call the doctor. And sure enough, the doctor intervened, and they found her a facility literally in my sister's, where she used to live, in her backyard, less than 15 minutes away. And the girls could visit her every day. And she was fine there, She didn't live, but, the doctor helped them girls out immensely with placing her, being an advocate. So it helps.
Yeah, it does. And your family is lucky to have you, that you could, guide them in the right direction. Sometimes people just need a little push in the right direction.
Right.
And they could go, sailing towards what they need to do. I want to thank you, Sue, for coming on Chatting with Betsy. And how can people get in touch with you?
On my Facebook page, I have a question to ask your listeners. Mm-hmm. If they have a particular subject they'd like me to do research on or talk about, go ahead. Send it to Betsy Wurzel, hashtag Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement. Let's talk. How can we help you?
That's right.
That's it. Thank you, Betsy. Thank you, Lillian and Jeannie with Passionate World Talk Radio. We appreciate everything you've done for Betsy and I and others. Thank you, Betsy.
You're welcome, Sue. And thank you to Jeannie White, who is producer and writes the blog. Please read the blog, because there's a lot of good information on there. And if you miss any of this audio cast, you can catch it, subscribe, and you won't miss my shows, Chatting with Betsy, on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeart, Google, also on YouTube, and I believe it's free, CastBox, to subscribe. And I'm going to have another guest on my series. This is going to be ongoing until I can't get any more people to speak on being an advocate. I will also speak myself. And this is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio. Memorial Weekend's coming up, folks. Remember the people who died for our country, men and women, and be safe, and just be kind. We need kindness in this world, and shine your light, and just love up on each other. That's what we need. So until I chat again, this is Betsy Wurzel. Bye-bye now.